Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Leah Chrest, author of two books, a blogger, teacher of Christian meditation on YouTube, and she calls herself a lay preacher, high school math teacher, mother, and wife. And we'll be talking about her, talking about Christian meditation, and parenting from a place of presence. Welcome to the show, Leah.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show, Leah. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about surrender. We'll talk about grief, and we'll talk about how one can find divine peace. We'll talk about all this. But before that, let's talk a bit about you, your journey, your background, your story, so that people know who they are listening to.
Absolutely. I am currently in my early 40s. When I was in my early 30s, I was a mother of two young children, a early elementary school student and a toddler. And my husband at the time was a active alcoholic, functional, and was very loving and kind most of the time. But, the disease took hold, and he had a very negative outlook on life and believed that the world was out to get him, and everything in the world, including us, was out to get him. And so it was a very difficult place to be. I found myself in a lot of depression at the time that was not chemical based. Some people, there's natural imbalances in our system that we need to correct. But in this case, it was purely situational. And, when my children were beginning to be affected by emotional state, I needed to find an answer. So I turned to my faith, and I turned to learning to listen to God. Instead of just talking, I learned to listen and learn to sit and be embraced by that just blanket of love. That learning to sit with the Holy Spirit or the divine of any flavor, whatever word you give it, depending on your faith background, it's the same thing. It's what loves us and what holds us in life. And my husband did pass 4 years ago from the disease and from alcoholism. And so that the strong foundation that I had built in my faith over those years carried me through that loss and to helping my children work through that as well. I just got remarried a year ago, and this was a surprise because I wasn't expecting that at all. But, the divine had other plans, and was led right to my current husband, who is a wonderful stepfather to my kiddos, and I have two beautiful stepchildren as well. So we're kind of a Brady Bunch, for those of you who know what that show is, the blended family. But my faith is when I found the secret in allowing myself to be held by God and to stop directing my own life and just allowing God to lead me, everything changed. It wasn't an out there change. It was an inside me change that then over time created the change in the outside world that I see.
Absolutely, Leah. So when you talk of listening to God, what does that mean? How should people understand about listening to God? Generally, when they go in front of God in whatever, they ask for one thing or the other. So help us understand from that perspective.
Yeah. So, think about a really good human relationship, whatever that is, a close friend, a spouse, a partner, whatever, maybe it's a parent-child relationship. Think about, or maybe grandparent, the best, most balanced whole relationship you've had in your lifetime. And think about what made it that way. And I'm going to bet on most cases, there was a two-way communication going on. That not only did you talk to that person, but you also listened to them. You heard what they had to say. A lot of times, and myself included, years ago, we treat God as a one-way relationship where we talk to God, we tell him what we think about what's going on in our lives and what we want to happen in our lives and out there. We may, and very good place in our hearts, pray for other people and situations and wanting something to happen. But rarely do we stop to actually listen. That doesn't work. That's not a healthy relationship. Now, God doesn't always speak in audible tones. I have known people who have heard the voice of God audibly, but I personally don't. But God does speak to us, and we have to learn to listen to that. So what I recommend doing for people who are just starting out with this is to do that normal prayer. So pray for whatever you want to pray for. I recommend praying in love for someone else, someone you care about, and wanting something positive for them, because that opens up your heart to love, to kindness, to compassion. And then as soon as you finish pouring your heart out to God, stop talking, but don't move your attention from your heart, and just listen. Listen with your heart, not your head, because this is of the ego. This is of your soul. And just listen. And a lot of times it can come as a feeling. For me, very slowly, it turned into like a blanket of love feeling, of knowing that I was enough just as I was. And that carried me. Over time, you may notice nudgings. You may notice synchronicities in your life happening. God speaks to us in many ways, and even other people. If you're learning to listen, you may find that you may ask God, I am looking for a job that's going to bring X, Y, and Z into my family's life. And then you're listening to meditation and you're in prayer, and maybe you feel peace, but nothing else. You're like, all right, well, that was worthless. But then you walk out, and 2 days later, someone's come to you and said, hey, did you hear about X, Y, or Z? And if you are attuned to that and saying, is God talking to me right now? Could I take that in prayer? Is this what I was looking for? A lot of times the divine will reach out to us in ways that maybe we don't expect.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, have you ever thought about whether listening to God is better or telling God about our problems is better?
So I think you need both, because sometimes you just got to get stuff off your chest, and I don't know that it's better. It's just balance, right? It's balance. You have to express where you're coming from, your pain. You got to get that out. When I was going through the roughest part, 10, 12 years ago, I vented a lot to God. I let God know exactly what I thought of my life situation. And then I said, okay, enough of me. Tell me how you see it. And a lot of times, it was like, well, maybe this, maybe that, maybe could you shift it and can you look at the positive? Because so often, and this is what I found that God leads me to in meditation and in prayer, is that we have these glasses on that make the world look terrible and focus only on the negative. And that's a survival thing. If we don't pick up on the dangers around us, we're going to end up in a crisis. So we do need to be alert to that, but we miss out on so much of the beauty. Already today, whoever's listening to this, think about the natural beauty around you and what you may have just walked past. There's a beautiful example of, I think it was like one of the best concert musicians, of the cellist of all time, was playing in a New York subway station. And how many people would pay hundreds of dollars to see this? I think it was Yo-Yo Ma, to see this cellist. But on that subway station, that day, maybe 3 people stopped to actually listen. They had one of the best musicians on the planet in front of them, giving them a world-class concert, and they were so busy wrapped up in what they were doing. And how often is that us? And so when you sit in prayer, when you sit in silence, you are allowing yourself to be shaped by a higher power that wants the best for you, so that you begin to pick up on those positives, on the blessings. And that changes your whole life. When you are focused on those blessings, on that good, more of that comes to you, right? When you are a kind human being, more people tend to be kinder to you. When you notice the beauty, you end up finding ways to bring more of that beauty into your life. And so there's just so much transformation that happens just by learning to listen and be guided by something that's not yourself. Because I'll tell you, I don't have it right 99% of the time, but the divine has it right 100% of the time. And if we learn to listen to that, we're going to be guided better.
Absolutely. So, Leah, what is it that you are trying to do for the people, when you talk about Holy Spirit surrender and biblical meditation?
What are you trying to do? That's an interesting question, because what you're actually trying to do is get yourself out of the way. It's for the first time you're trying to not do, and you're trying to let God do for you. I've had many days when I feel burdened by 1,001 different things. And when I wake up that way, and this is kind of, for years, predating my years of meditation, when I woke up in the morning, my first thought was, crud, another day. That was kind of the attitude I woke up with, is this attitude of, oh, again? And I'm a pretty happy person even back then. And yet that's how I got out of bed every morning. And when I sit in prayer, that shifts. And so now I wake up almost always on the much happier side, but it takes time to transform. So getting yourself out of the way, when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel burdened, that's one of two things. One possibility is that you're making up things, burdens for yourself that you don't need to have, that you've put on yourself. You think you need to manage this person's life or that person's life or this situation or that situation, when frankly, they do a lot better without you intervening. As parents, sometimes that's the case. We want to micromanage our children's lives. I mean, that's at least me as a parent. And sometimes the best thing we can do is step back and observe and just provide a little nudge here, a little nudge there, a listening ear, instead of directing and micromanaging, So sometimes there's those responsibilities when we feel stressed, when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel burdened. It's because we put it on ourselves, not because God did. And then there's the situations when we are given something to do by the divine. We are told to do this, that, or the other. And we feel like God's not going to pull through to make it happen. Where we think, oh, no, that you're asking me this today. I don't have that kind of energy. And you're fighting against it. You're resisting it. And that's what's causing you not to have the energy. So if you take that to prayer and you got to go and you see, where is the peace? You follow the peace. So what you're trying to do when you surrender is, number one, to figure out what's of you and what's of God. And if it's of you, you let it go. And how do you know that? What brings peace? When you think about that thing, do you feel peace? If you feel peace, it's of God. If you feel anxiety, it's probably not. Let it go. And then once you find what is of God, then it's a matter of trusting God to carry it for you, to provide the avenues, to provide what needs to happen to create those situations to do that. So it's really getting yourself out of the way. And one thing I want to throw in here, I know you didn't ask this directly, but it comes up in a lot of conversations I have with people about meditation, is those who follow it from the Christian lens. The Eastern side, I know that there's tons of well-grounded, this is the way our faith works. From people who have grown up Christian in the West, if you're listening from the West, there's a lot of pushback on that's not biblical, or that's not in our church tradition. And I want to push back against that and say, oh, it absolutely is. It was part of our church tradition up to the Middle Ages. And then the Age of Enlightenment, it went away because there was so much of a pressure on the rationalization and the rational mind that it was discounted and pushed aside and said, we don't understand what's going on with this meditation thing, with this listening to God. If I can't hear it, I can't touch it, I can't smell it, it's not real. And they pushed it aside. And so, we need to go back and embrace those roots. They were a part of the Christian faith as well. And Jesus himself, in the Bible, when you read, he went off for 2 hours to pray or something like that. Before dawn, he would go out for hours to pray. And I don't know, to me, I can't imagine him sitting there just yapping for 2 hours. And we talked about that's not a balanced relationship. There's listening involved. So, yeah.
Absolutely. When you talk of surrender, a life of surrender guided by the Holy Spirit, how should one understand, especially from people in your part of the world and anyone who is trying to understand from another part of the world?
Yeah. So surrender is a scary thing. It really is. And it was scary for me too. So I've had some experiences, I guess you would call mystical, where I was told certain things would happen, and then they happened. And so one of them was my husband's passing. I was told 9 months before he passed. And this was not an audible voice, but it was clearly not of me. I was not thinking about it at all, but I was put in this state of deep calm and said, this is going to happen. It wasn't an exact date, but it was within the next year or two, this is happening. And I was not accepting of this at all, pushing back on. And then it happened, and I was told that it would be the best thing for everyone involved. And I pushed back hard on that, because of my babies. I was like, no, this can't be the best thing for the children. How about my husband's parents? And then over the last 4 years, I've watched healing happen in these situations and watched God work. I was led to my current husband through a dream that I had. And again, I wasn't interested in dating, wouldn't know part of it. I was told the middle name of my stepdaughter, and that's how I found him. Was, you know, the God brought us together, and we were talking, and oh my gosh, this is the man. And you know that, and then even my current job, I was told about that in advance. And so for me, it's been very direct leading that's helped me to trust, but not all of us have that. So we have to start, okay, so what do we do if we don't have these big guided moments, right? And I would say start small. Start by not resisting. So the most common thing, like universally we resist, is the weather. How often do we get up and we complain about the weather, right? Why is it raining today? It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too windy, it's too this, it's too that. Just start with surrendering to what is with the environment outside. It's raining today. Okay. Okay. Can we not complain about it? Can we just say, maybe someone needs some rain? You know, maybe this heat is exactly what X, Y, or Z needs. I don't know. I don't understand it, but kind of surrender to that. Let it go. Then start with other things. Maybe it's your life situation. Okay, God, what do you want me to learn from this? What do you want me to see in this? And instead of resisting and pushing back, to just accept, step back, and just allow yourself to be shown what God's doing in it. Because it's not always what you think. You know, my relationship with my first husband was a beautiful one. I miss him dearly. And we both grew so much from that. But it was not in the ways that I ever expected. I thought our relationship was supposed to be for one thing, and God used it a completely different way. I mean, I wouldn't be here talking to you if it weren't for him and for the journey he put me on. He set me on a journey of spiritual healing that I never expected, right? Because I got to the point where I needed God so much. And I needed God's healing. And then God healed both of us. My husband did die sober. He had 3 months sobriety, and we got to see him whole and healed. So, you know, these things are out of our control. And the more that we try to hold on to control, to manage our life instead of allowing us to move with the flow of God's will for us, not only does life go better, but we also end up with a lot more peace. So it's going to happen God's way regardless. Do you want to go along with it, or do you want to go down fighting? I choose to go with it and work with God and allow God to live in me. That's how I like to live.
How should people understand peace? What is peace in today's time? And especially people think about divine peace. What is that even?
Yeah, divine peace, I believe, is non-resistance. Is when you are not pushing back, and that you're trusting a higher intelligence than what you have within yourself. And so divine peace doesn't mean that everything, you know, I had divine peace in the midst of that alcoholic relationship. I've had divine peace in a job that brought a lot of stress where I didn't feel happy. I've had divine peace while my children are screaming and crying about whatever because they're having a bad day. I've had divine peace in the middle of all sorts of situations in my life. Divine peace is not situational based. It underrides everything, and it is a deep, deep trust in something far greater than ourselves. And we allow ourselves to just lean into and rely on a higher intelligence, a higher wisdom to guide us, protect us, nurture us.
Absolutely. Looks like some technical problem. I don't know which side it is, but we'll keep watching for that. Let's wait for some time. Yes, Leah. It
Sorry,
happens
I don't
sometimes.
know
Yeah.
what happened there.
No problem, no problem. It happens even many a times. I also don't know whether it's from my side or something. So
Yeah.
I was just wondering. Don't worry. So you were talking about the peace part.
Yes. Yeah, it's that about non-resistance. We talked about allowing God to carry us, to carry the situation, and to ultimately know what is best. And I think we have to pull back and understand that we may not know why things happen the way they do in this lifetime. And we have to let go of that. There are a lot of things I've been able to see that I didn't understand from 10, 15 years ago that I can look back and see, oh, that's what you were doing, God. Your way really is best. Where at the time I was going down fighting. And there's still some things I have question marks about. I don't know why my grandmother had to go through so much pain as she was passing, for instance. That's just a question mark for me. But I know that God's going to provide that answer ultimately, if not in this lifetime. And it's that when you trust and you say, okay, I've seen you work good in all these ways. Can I let these go? Epic crises, things that are happening in the world at large. We look at these things and we say, I don't understand. But then I see these and I do understand. Can I trust you that you do know what's best and that there's something way, way bigger than our world and our lives that you're doing, and just lean into that.
Absolutely, absolutely, Leah. How and when did these books happen? Was it all planned, or it happened? They happened along the way.
So the first book I started writing, I was really into near-death experiences and reading those. And that was really giving me an anchor for my faith at that time, because a lot of what we've been talking about, you and I, just in the last 3 or 4 minutes about surrender, about trust, I learned that from near-death experiences. There's a lot of wisdom there where I was able to see when people pass on, they get those answers, right? And they're able to see all those burning questions. Well, why this? Why that? And then they get those answers. And so I was able to see, oh, okay, there's a lot of things that God is doing that I'm just not seeing. It allowed me to have trust. So I wanted to write a book. It was what is it called? Narrative nonfiction is what I call it. So I built a fictional account that leaned on about 500 near-death experiences that I had read and studied. And it has extensive footnotes and walk someone through the ultimate near-death experience. If you were to have it, what would it be like? So I wrote that. I hand wrote that book, sitting while my husband was watching sports. And I would just, the 15 minutes a night would write. It took me about 4 years. Eventually typed it all up, edited it thoroughly, and put that out. I published it the day before my husband died, which I had no idea he was going to pass when he did. I knew that it was probably going to happen, per what I told you, but no idea time frame. I think he knew. And he said, you're publishing your book today. The next morning he passed away. And I'm so glad that he made me publish it, because that's been so hard to do in grief, to publish that sort of book. And the second book, as I was working through my feelings of grief, people were telling me this is going to be the hardest year of your life, just going to have to survive it. And I said, that's not what I know about God. I'm not surviving, I'm thriving. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to let God work through the situation for my and everyone else's good. And I'm going to trust it. And so as part of that next year I wrote, It's Okay to Be Okay. Grief is a pathway to healing and new life. And it kind of walks through my journey, my husband and my journey through his illness, through his passing, and the beauty of our relationship and how that transformed through it. And then my healing, and very, very practical ways to work through healing, but also a heavy, heavy emphasis on spirituality, on trusting God and allowing God to work in and through you to find that divine peace we've been talking about. And then I'm currently working on a book on listening to the Holy Spirit. And it's heavily Christian-based, biblical-based, unlike my other two, which lean on the Bible, but also pull from Eastern influences, from near-death experiences, some other things. This is a wholly Christian book because I wanted to touch on, I think that the Western Christian culture doesn't always give God enough credit on the mystical side, as we talked about. So I want to talk about using only the Bible and my own personal experience, how God truly walks with us and how to learn to listen to that, as we talked about today, you and I. So that's what's in the works right now. And I don't know a timeline on that. It's one of those, I got in a dream, write this. Okay. So we'll see when that ends up happening, but I trust God. So we'll see.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so much to learn about all this from you, Leah, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about you, from your books, and also your upcoming book that you just talked about. What's the best way for them to do so?
My blog is probably the easiest place to reach me. It's thecontemplativechristian.com, thecontemplativechristian.com. Just so write that out in the your search bar, and you can find me that way. On my blog, I have links to both my books, my YouTube channel where I have Christian meditations listed, and then of course my blog is there, as well as my social media. I'm not super heavy into social media. My blog is the main way I communicate, and you're welcome to leave me a comment, subscribe to the blog, whatever you'd like, and reach out to me there.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.